Okay, Madam Recording Secretary, I think we have our quorum now. So I'll call this November 12th Long-Term Financial Policy and Audit Subcommittee meeting to order. Could you please do a roll call?
Member Rogers?
Here.
Chair Schwethelm?
Here.
Member Sawyer?
Here.
Let the order reflect that all subcommittee members are present.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of housekeeping reminders. So subcommittee members, please keep your audio on mute unless you're speaking. As members of the public join the meeting, you'll be participating as an attendee. Your microphone and camera will be muted. Only today's panelists will be viewed during the meeting. If you're calling in from a telephone and choose to speak during the public comment portions of today's agenda for privacy concerns, the host will be renaming your viewable phone number to resident in the last 4 digits of your phone number. Madam Recording Secretary, could you explain how public comments will be heard at today's meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Schwethelm. At each agenda item, the item is presented. The chair will ask for subcommittee members' comments and then open it up for public comment. The host in the Zoom will be lowering all hands until public comment is open for the agenda item. Once the chair has called for public comment, the chair will announce for the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on the specific agenda item. If you are calling in to listen to the meeting audibly, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. The host will then call on the public who have raised their hands. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and a timer will appear on the screen for the subcommittee members and public to see. Once all live public comments have been heard, the meeting host will read emails submitted. If you have a live public comment on an agenda item, but also submitted an email, your email comment will not be read during the meeting. Additionally, there is 1 public comment period on today's agenda to speak on non-agenda matters, which is item 2. This is the time when any person may address the subcommittee on matters not listed on the agenda.
Great, thank you for that. And now we are on item 2. So we're now taking public comment on item 2, non-agenda matters. This is a time when any person may address the subcommittee on matters not listed on the agenda. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Madam Host, would you please facilitate public comment on item 2?
A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of the countdown. At this time, I see no hands raised, and there were no email comments received.
Great, thank you. On to item 3, approval of minutes. Mr. Sawyer and Mr. Rogers, did you get an opportunity to review the special meeting minutes from our October 28th meeting? And if so, any additions, corrections, or deletions?
No changes.
Reading your lips, Mr. Sawyer, no changes. Okay, so we'll accept those as submitted. All right, item 4.1, Mr. Alton, I believe you're introducing this item.
I am, Chairman Schwethelm. Thank you very much, members of the subcommittee. The item before us now is a report on the public input for use of the PG&E settlement funds. Next slide, please. So what we are going to do today is we're going to kind of give a little bit of a recap of where we are to now, then go over the virtual input meetings that we've had, and then the digital survey results. And then we will talk about next steps. The purpose of this meeting is really informational in advance of the closed session on Tuesday. So I'm not expecting or requesting any decisions with this. However, if you do have specific direction or you see some changes in the slides that you'd like made before the council meeting, I can make sure I have those changed before the study session on Tuesday. So next slide, please. So As you know, we received the PG&E settlement funds of about $95 million in July. On the September 10th subcommittee meeting, we talked about potential uses of those funds, including addressing fire resiliency unmet needs, which was about a $42 to $47 million package of projects. We looked at which was anywhere from rebuilding Fire Station 5 to damaged sidewalk repairs and pavement repairs in the burn scar areas, and hazardous tree removal and all those. Next slide, please. So we also looked at, we also discussed operational needs and community needs, noting that this was while the fire affected a specific areas directly, it really did affect the whole community. And we were looking for those types of projects as well. So some of those included restoration of reserves for to maintain our operations moving forward, jump-starting affordable housing in the downtown, Roseland Library, ideas like that. We basically just captured some items that we had heard in other meetings and kind of brought that forward at that time. And then next slide, please. So then we received emails and letters from citizens, some out in various areas of the city. We took note of those. Like I said, we had a digital survey. We also met with our employee groups as a part of this. So we really reached out within the city organization and also the community at large, and looking specifically at fire survivor related areas. So Coffee Park and in that neighborhood, and fire impacted mobile home communities, looking at the Fountain Grove, Hidden Valley, Montecito, and Oakmont neighborhood areas, but then also reaching out to all community members. So we put out a digital survey, which I believe it went out in mid-September and closed out in the end of October. Like I said, we did have those 3 virtual meetings. And from that, I think we'll go on to the next page. Yes, and then also for the output, for the input collection, we did news releases. We multiple bilingual posts across all city social media platforms. We put this out in our City Connections e-newsletter. We placed an ad in LeBeau's. We have a website that has been open, which is the 2017 fire settlement page of the city's website. And then we also did direct outreach to fire survivor block captains and organized groups. I think at this point, one of the things I do want to say, and this is a little bit irregular, but I do want to take the opportunity to thank the different folks that really kind of helped put all of this stuff together. Adrienne Mertens and her group, the different subject matter experts that worked with us on the panels for all these community meetings. This is a rather extensive and exhaustive process that we've went through to try to get the information that would be hopefully usable by the council as we move forward to really gauge what the community, what their needs are. And it was a very large group effort in order to make that through. So in the community meetings, we basically all, they all had the same format. We had a panelists and subject matter experts. I was on there. We had members of the fire department and transportation and public works and housing and community services, anywhere where we thought that we could go and be able to answer questions that would come up. We provided an overview of the or a background of the settlement dollars, an overview of the fire resiliency unmet needs, and provided examples of other community projects that could possibly be funded from this funding. And then we open that up for Q&A. So next slide, please. So in the first community input meeting, this was in the Coffee Park neighborhood and the fire impacted mobile home communities. There were 23 attendees. We received 5 comments during the Q&A period. And those were basically to fix the damages and the unfunded unmet needs in the specifically in the Coffee Park area, but really in the burn area in particular, to promote fire resiliency, to come up with a sidewalk reimbursement program for those folks that couldn't wait, or at least move forward with repairing their sidewalk before any reimbursements came in. And then to basically make the area stronger and safer going forward. Next slide, please. So then our second input meeting, and this was a little bit later. This happened on October 21st. Ironically, we had a fire in the middle of our, between our first input meeting and our second, so we paused about a month. And came back on the 21st of October and had a virtual community meeting for the fire survivors in the Fountain Grove, Hidden Valley, Montecito, and Oakmont neighborhood areas. Again, there were 14 attendees. I believe there were about 6 comments. They really focused on fixing the fire burned areas back to the way they were pre-fire, and really focusing on spending those dollars first before any others. They wanted that. That was a very strong message that came out of there. They also wanted us to, or the council to look at using mitigation measures and prevention measures with technology, including drones and sensors. There was a theme that came out of there also, that they were worried about the effects of continual fires going through there that would have on property insurance going forward, and how that could be a drain on the economy. Next slide, please. So then on October 22nd, we had our community-wide input meeting that we had 42 attendees for that. And I believe there were 21 commenters. There were definitely some responses or comments for fire prevention and rebuilding. However, more of the community-wide projects came out in that meeting, and I guess that would tend to make sense. Some of those included bringing fiber through to the premises, Roseland Library, joining with the match for the county's match for the RED, and affordable housing and rental assistance, protecting the vulnerable and undocumented individuals. So, and also, I don't have that on there, but it was also the Southeast Greenway was, and funding that with a dollar amount for that. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the other thing that we did that was community-wide was we did a digital survey, and yes, so that was open from September 15th to October 25th. We did it in both English and Spanish. We had 3,000, a little over 3,000 responses in English and 32 in Spanish. So what I'm going to do here with the slides that go through, they're gonna have both the English and then they'll have the Spanish responses right next to it. So you'll be able to kind of see how they track together. We asked some background questions, such as, were they a city resident in 2017? Where are they living now? Just to kind of give sort of a geographic understanding of the people that were responding. And then we asked a series of ranked choice questions that were really based off of the different types of projects that we had heard going through, and just and put that in. So with that, we will move on to the survey itself. So on the first one was just a general question of if the respondents lived in the city in October 17th during the wildfires, and 85% of the respondents did. And the pages got a little bit out of order here, but so the survey respondents of the current area of residence, it looks like the most of them are in the Northeast Santa Rosa area at about 47%, and then the rest of the city made up there, with a few outside Sonoma County, very little outside of the state, but mostly within the city limits. And then for the Spanish responses for this, the majority of them lived in southwest and northeast Santa Rosa, and northwest as well. So basically those areas of that. And then you'll see, this is where I said there's just a tiny bit out of order here, reciting 94% of the Spanish responses lived in the city limits during the fires. So we asked if their home was destroyed or business destroyed or fire damaged during the wildfires, with or did a family member perish in the wildfires. There was an 80 or 20% of those were yes, so most of the folks were not directly affected by the fires being from there. And then in that track right there with the Spanish responses at 25%, saying that they did have a home or business destroyed during those fires. Asking whether they currently live within the city limits. So this is kind of a more general of that. We've kind of heard the areas where they currently are now. About 84% are currently living within the city limits, and about 87% of the Spanish survey responses with that. And so now going into trying to narrow down if they're living in the high wildfire risk areas or the WUI, and a majority of them do not, with 35% of the English responses where they did. And on the Spanish responses, 50% did not, with about 19% saying they did, and the rest not, unsure. So now moving on to the ranked choice questions. Right off the top, we wanted to hit on whether the PG&E settlement fund should be used first for the city's fire rebuild projects that have not yet been recovered and are still unfunded, like rebuilding Fire Station 5 and the repair of damaged sidewalks and road pavement. So we received 3,000 responses on that, and 76% either strongly agreed or agreed that that's how the money should be used first. And with the Spanish responses for that, it was 78%. So it tracked right along with it, except for more were of the strongly agreed area. And then looking at vegetation management and fuel reduction in the WUI, 89% strongly agreed or agreed that that should be a priority for the use of the funds. And with the Spanish responses, it was 97%. So clearly moving in positive in that direction. So then looking at evacuation routes and construction and improvements in the WUI, we're looking at 69% either strongly agreed or agreed with the use of the funds in that area. And with the Spanish survey responses, it was 91%. And moving into home hardening incentives, assistance programs, basically to make structures more defensible to fire. That one was a little bit more toward the middle, with 54% strongly agreeing or agreeing for that. And on this one, there was a rather high amount that simply didn't agree or disagree. On the Spanish survey responses, however, that was 88% that thought that was a good use of the PG&E funds. So looking at wildfire readiness and emergency preparedness and community education, 61% of the English respondents, it's still around that 3,000 response area. 61% of those either strongly agreed or agreed with putting money toward those types of programs, and 94% of Spanish survey responses were in that area. So moving on to jumpstarting affordable housing opportunities through incentive funding, this was the one where about 38% felt that the money should go toward those types of programs. Again, in around 3,000 responses of the English survey, 53% in the Spanish survey of those folks, the 32 responses that we had there, agreed with the use of funds in that area. Looking at strengthening resiliency for the city's infrastructure, such as backup generators and microgrids, and ensuring continued functionality of critical facilities. That one, again, 79%, it was very strongly agreed to that is a good source or a good project type for the funds. And about 84%, which most of them as to strongly agree in the Spanish survey responses. About 51% of the English respondents had support for or thought support for businesses and workforce recovery through loans and grants was a good use for the funds. In the Spanish survey, it was a little bit higher at, a little bit lower, excuse me, at 47%. So to build new community assets such as libraries, community centers, polls, the online responses, English responses, there was about 26% thought that was a good use of those funds. Whereas with this Spanish survey, that was 47%. Then homeless services, the English respondents, again, this is a little bit less answered this one at only 2,900, but still very close to that 3,000 constant amount, looking at about 34% either agreed or strongly agreed that homeless services should be used with the PG&E money. In the Spanish responses, it was a little bit more at 42%. Road repairs not associated with fire recovery. This was 33% of English respondents thought that was a good use of those funds. Meanwhile, 72% of the Spanish survey responses thought that was a good use of those funds. And then let's see here, looking at broadband internet, fiber optic or wireless solutions, 44% of the English respondents thought that was a good use of those funds. Meanwhile, 41% of the Spanish survey responses were there. I would add with that is that while we had kind of an all-encompassing question dealing with both wireless and fiber, it was made very clear through the community survey when this came up that that fiber is the preferred choice for the people that spoke out about it. Moving to park improvements such as construction of new parks, all-weather sports facilities, and other amenities. 28% of the English respondents looked at those as worthwhile projects for these funds, and about 50% of the Spanish survey responses wanted to go in that area. So what we did also in the is we provided a summary page because there's a lot of graphs there. I tried to give you the strongly agree here. You can go back and kind of hit the areas that that we have of the English survey responses, and then on the next page we have the Spanish survey responses. But that just kind of gives you a way to go back to. Now we also asked some open-ended questions, and to be quite honest, I believe in what we posted, and it'll also be with the council item for the 22nd as an addendum to the staff report, is all of the open-ended responses. What we did was we broke that down into themes. I believe the whole report just on the survey alone was 200 plus pages long. And so, and trying to get all those into slides is difficult. They are there, all the comments are there for you if you do want to take a look at them. But the themes generally included a lot of what we're talking about here, especially that came out in the various community meetings, both wildfire protection and recovery and rebuild, emergency alerts and public info, public safety, building and development and housing, and honoring those that lost, and promoting mental health services, homelessness, roads and sidewalks, parks and sports, energy and technology and connectivity, ecosystem and climate, financial support, and schools and childcare. So it's the whole gambit of things that you could use money for came out in the open-ended, which is to be expected and appropriate. So with that, we have some next steps that we're going through. So this meeting here on the 17th, Tuesday, we will have this presentation to the full council in study session. On December 15th, we're going to bring an item to study session that looks at the wildfire preparedness and mitigation and resiliency projects. So some of these that where the city departments have gone in and looked at real specific things that we can do to promote a lot of the themed ideas that came out in these meetings, such as dealing with widening some evacuation routes, namely Highway 12, doing traffic signalization around evacuation routes, constructing and moving fire stations to meet more coverage for the city, and radio infrastructure. These are all, and we'll divide them up in the staff report and presentation of being those things that are under the city control. So stuff that we would do on our own because they're completely within our control. But there's a lot of them that we would need to reach out to our state and even other partners like PG&E to work with in order to present a more fire resilient city. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Alan, for that presentation. I just have a real quick question before I go to my colleagues. On the December 15th meeting, will the Community Wildfire Protection Plan implementation costs be covered during that meeting?
I absolutely include it there. I can include it in that, yes.
Yeah. I would add
the cost of it.
Yeah, because I know, I think it came before one of our subcommittees, and then we asked, so we got this plan, we accepted the plan. And so I would love to hear what the cost for the implementation would be on that December 15th meeting. So
Sure. I can get that.
Great. Back to my colleagues. Why don't I just call you Mr. Sawyer? Do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Alan, for the presentation. It's a lot of data to gather together. I'm curious how the staff responded to the strongly disagrees. And oftentimes, not often, but there were a number of times where the strongly disagrees, the disagrees and the strongly disagrees were equal to the agrees, or equal to the other two. There's always a second side to these to the story and these surveys. It would be interesting. I mean, I think if we're going to ask people what they want, and then ask them if they don't want something as well, I think it needs to be. I would like to see them side by side. It's at least as something to consider on your ranked order on slide. Oh, I don't have a number of this slide. Ranked order by percentage of respondents that strongly agree or agree. Having side by side to strongly disagree, unless where those are to be dismissed, would give us a full picture of the attitude of the respondents. So I'm just wondering how the staff, we ended up with what people wanted, but there were some real strong opinions of what they didn't want. And so I'm just wondering if that's something that you were planning on including, or whether it was something that you were only looking for the affirmatives.
Well, I'll be honest, we weren't, it wasn't that we were looking for the affirmatives. What we are just presenting what we received. So we're not waiting one way or the other. I gave, I guess we could have gone and took it from the disagree side, but that seemed a little negative. I didn't know how that would come out looking. So I went with the strongly agree and disagree. I think that's the way some other pollsters do it. And so I kind of took it along that route. Absolutely, I can put them in an order of things that the folks really want, and then build into the things where people really don't like, and you can kind of see it go from a lot of support to no support type of thing like that and kind of rank it that way. We really weren't ranking. I think, honestly, I think what we did here is just went the order of the survey and just presented the information from that with both English and Spanish there. I need to look at the Spanish or at the survey again, but I believe that's the way we went with it. And so we're just simply providing that. And I highlighted the agreed part just because of my friendly, jovial nature.
Well, I appreciate that. I just, it helps me to balance the response. If I
Right.
see 50% of the people strongly agree and strongly agree that that A should be done, and at the same time, 50% of the people strongly disagree and disagree that A should be done, it helps me to understand actually helps me take the temperature of the community on that particular item, as opposed to only seeing that 50% of the people said yes. So it helps me to see the balance, and I think it's a more accurate representation of the respondents if you were to put them side by side with the ranked order.
Okay,
I'd consider it. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I understood.
Do you have
And
any
that was the only question I had.
no other questions or opinions?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually kind of in a similar vein to John, I'd be interested in seeing some of the numbers pulling out what people who live in Santa Rosa thought versus people who don't live in Santa Rosa thought. To be very frank, I don't really care that much what people who don't live here think we should spend the money on. So it'd be more helpful for me to see what people who are within our community think we would best use the funding for. I think that's the most instructive to me.
Great. Thank you. Anything else, Chris, or is that it? Okay, Alan, I had a question on slide 3. It's the one entitled the Fire Resiliency Unmet Needs. And my specific question, we have specific dollar amounts for the damaged sidewalk repair and damaged pavement repair. Combined, it's about $28.1 million. Is it safe to assume that includes every damaged sidewalk and pavement in the Coffee Park, Fountain Grove, and Hidden Valley area? How do we come up with those figures?
We came up with those. I'm looking at my notes. Hold on. Yeah, the estimate was to repair all the sidewalks in the affected areas that exhibited signs of fire damage. We have maps that show all the locations. So we've had estimates from that as part of our request process through FEMA, which was denied. So it's based on those estimates. Yeah, so that's what it is.
So could you specifically tell me a specific road, Hopper Avenue corridor? That's been, I know, I've heard that a lot from the folks in Northwest Santa Rosa. Redoing the sidewalks along that stretch of the roadway that has seen some other improvements recently by the city. Is that included in there?
I'd have to get back with you to find out specifically of Hopper Avenue. I do recall it coming up in the community group with Coffee Strong, and I am trying to remember that conversation. I'm kind of blanking on it a little bit, but I will have that answer for you on Tuesday. That
would be great, because there's also some with the PG&E light pole replacement project going on. So yes, we have the damage from 2017. Well, now we're also experiencing in some neighborhoods where they're digging up some of the sidewalks to replace those power poles. And so understanding what would be fixed and what wouldn't be fixed, if there is a master list of here's all the sidewalks that led to the $4.1 million estimate, that would be very helpful information, I think, for all of us to have.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, do you have another question?
Yeah, you just prompted me on one more. Alan, for folks when they specifically we're talking about reimbursements for front loading money from that they would have gotten from insurance. From a practical perspective, have we talked about what a program like that would actually look like? And in particular, I'm curious to know for people who spent money before they had the insurance money, were they then reimbursed by insurance on the back end anyway? And do we have a picture of what that looks like versus for folks who end up not using all of their insurance money as a result? Were they able to put that into other aspects of their home? I'm wondering about the logistics or the practicality of how a program like that might be constructed and whether that came up at all in the discussions.
It, as part of the discussion, it did not, other than there was in at least one or two of the people that did respond at that meeting that they did want some way of being made whole. So but as to how that would happen, we didn't have that much of a discussion. It was we were bringing in input. They weren't asking a question. They just said, I want to be made whole. And we wrote that down. And so, yes, internally, I'd need to try to figure out a way how we would do that. And that could be down the road of coming up with that type of a program.
Yeah, it strikes me as pretty complicated and a lot of work for staff to figure out how many people actually would meet the criteria, looking at their data or their information that they have around what they spent, all those sorts of components to it. So I'm just curious as we move forward through this process, what that might look like.
Right. Yeah, we would need to do some more work in actually vetting that out. We're just in the information gathering stage. I have a feeling this is going to take, for some of these things are going to take a couple of stages, right? We wanted all the input, we've got that. The council gives direction on going in particular areas. Let's say that's one of them. And then now staff's going to need to try to figure out how to do it and get back to council to say that this is a feasible program. We can do it. This is how it is. And then you would give us the final decision on moving forward with it. That's how I would envision it.
Okay, and then Al, my last question still on slide 3 is there's no cost associated with vegetation management, one-time costs, and then the last one I'm particularly interested in, the hazardous tree removal, and you've got public right-of-way, open space, and private property. Who decides what, when, and the cost for all of those?
Yeah, so I think the cost estimate that we had in that particular, in the slideshow that we did with those, I believe was about, I think it was an estimate at around $5 million. It wasn't I don't think it was that firm of a number. It was, so that's, and I think what we're going to do is see more of that as we move forward, especially on December 15th, because now you're looking at taking these sort of high level projects. And now we're really focusing in on, here's the dollars you're going to need. As you get closer to a decision, we're sort of narrowing the cone, if you will, of the things that you want to spend towards. Here's what it's going to cost. Here's how you can make your final decision. So I believe the number that we were looking at was right around $5 million with that. I believe that was dealing more with the private property area, but there's different ways that we can go about doing that. Again, if this is a way that the council wants to go, then we can vet out the appropriate way to make that happen that works for all.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, just given the dynamics of hazardous trees on the west side of the freeway are certainly different than the hazardous tree removal on the east side of the freeway and some of the hilly environment there. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, those are all the questions I have. Mr. Sawyer, do you have an additional question?
Yeah, one additional question. It's on the same slide, Mayor. Thank you. The vegetation management one-time costs. Vegetation management, I think of as a program, as opposed to just managing it for 1 year. I mean, it's something that we would really have to have something that was very comprehensive. So, what was, as you do your research and what is the concept of vegetation management one time? What does that mean?
Well, so
Or is it the development of the program? It could be the
It-
development of the program, but I just don't know.
Yeah, so I think what you would be looking at, you're absolutely right. You have both a long-term program that's a multi-year type of deal, and I know that the fire department is working on that. I believe we actually approved a position to go toward it and to have that type of an ongoing program. But yet there's still immediate cost to remove the fuel load. I think that's the right term, in those areas now, right? So you clear everything out, and then however that works, those could be seen more as one time, and then you've got an ongoing program that goes with it. So maybe these funds go and just help you eradicate all the dead and dying trees and the stuff that's on the ground, and then we work out another way through the budget to create a more ongoing program that keeps up with that. But you need that initial money to clear things out.
So the vegetation management is kind of coupled with the hazardous tree removal and the removal of other fuel that would need to go away as soon as is reasonably possible.
For the purposes of that slide, it's kind of lumped together. I think this would be one of those things that as we move forward, and I think what you're going to find, because there was a lot of positive and strongly positive comments toward going in that type of a way with that type of management, with whatever removing the trees and stuff. I think we now start then getting into this, okay, here's an influx of money to be able to get us to where we need to be, and then here is an ongoing program. And they're they're kind of under the same umbrella, but they're two different, or maybe 3 or 4 different parts under that umbrella.
Yeah, thank you.
So for the purposes of this, we lumped it together.
Okay, and for what it's worth, and Chris brought up the issue around the making whole of the people that went ahead and repaired their sidewalks or replaced their sidewalks. That is something that would require a fair amount of little more detail, because that sounds like a case-by-case analysis of reimbursement from insurance companies and where the money went and how. I mean, that sounds like a can of worms. But so to be able to make a decision on that particular item, I too, and probably all 3 of us, and probably all 7 of us, would need to have a pretty strong analysis of what that really would look like. I don't it just sounds like an incredible amount of work and analysis, regardless of the fact that it would be fair to try to make sure that those that where the money came out of their pockets, but ascertaining whether or not it was the right thing to do in individual cases would take a lot of analysis.
Understood.
Great. Okay, anything else from either of you? Okay, we're now taking public comments on item 4.1, community input on PG&E settlement funds. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Madam Zoom host, would you please facilitate public comment on item 4.1?
A countdown timer has appeared for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you're invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the time of the countdown ends. At this time, I am seeing no hands raised and no comment was received via email.
All right, thank you for that. Alan, did you need any additional information from the subcommittee?
No, I think I'm good. I've got my marching orders.
Thank you very much for this information. It is a ton of information, but I think it's important that we have all this before we actually start our discussions with the 7 of us on City Council. Anything specific from Chris or John that you would like included in our next agenda item or our next agenda meeting?
Nothing off the top of my head.
Okay, just floating it out there. Okay, having nothing further to discuss, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Y'all.
Thanks, Alan.